We're back on the Careers Podcast, and today we're with Camille Hartnett from Trail Sniffers. Camille, it's a pleasure to have you on again. We're doing version 2.0. How are you today?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Really chuffed to be back.
It's exciting. We've got so many things in the pipeline. Now, just to catch up to speed and refresh, we did episode 1 where we talked about, the day-to-day in the world of a dog behaviourist and the kind of things that go down in the industry. And you gave us some really good insights on that. But today we wanted to take a little bit more of a focus on you and your backstory. So I think the first question that I wanted to ask you is before, dog behaviour and any certifications, who was Camille and what was home life like with animals?
I was definitely someone who always loved animals, and that was definitely fueled by mum and dad and our upbringing. We always had many animals in the household, whether it was friends, families bringing their pets along, or we rescued an animal, two-legged, four-legged, scaled, all of the above.
Wow.
Yeah, we grew up in a household full of animals and full of love. So that definitely sparked my passion, I think, and definitely I felt like a brain switch into wanting to learn more about them and how to understand them. They brought a lot of joy to my world as well. So yeah, I think I almost got along better with animals and people sometimes, and I felt like they had an understanding of me, but I didn't understand much about them. So I think that's why I became very curious and wanted to learn as much as possible.
I relate to that so much, like with my dog Frankie. Yeah, I feel like she knows me better than anyone. And yet, you know what? Her whole life, we've not even said one word to each other. How crazy is that?
It's pretty special though, isn't it? I mean, to come home after a day where, you've had a fairly rubbishy day and you don't want to talk to anyone, but there is someone there who understands you to a degree.
And you don't have to explain anything. It's all behavior based.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
special, pretty special.
I totally feel you on that one. So was there a specific moment in time where you realized that dogs were going to be a major part of your life? Because you're saying that you had all different kinds of animals around,
Yeah,
but why dogs in particular?
I think dogs made sense to me in a weird way. I think, again, I grew up with some really special dogs when I was younger, and particularly going through school and bullying and all those sorts of things, and coming home to someone who was going to be there regardless of what happened. I think that's why I sort of started to feel a bit of a connection with them, because they were incredibly genuine and they were just there and comforting. I just felt like I was understood without having to communicate that with them, really. So I don't think it was one drastic, light bulb moment, but it was closer I got with our family pets, then yeah, that's when the passion really definitely ignited.
Professionally, what were you doing work-wise before you considered being a dog behaviorist as a career?
Yeah, so I still sort of followed my passion from when I was younger and fell more and more in love with animals and learning about them. And so when I had the opportunity to after school, I went in to do captive animal management
Okay.
and the zoology. So I didn't really know where to start, and I thought I would love to be a zookeeper. That's something that would always be fun when you're a kid. Be a police officer, this, that, and mine was always a vet or a zookeeper. So I
Yeah.
went in and did captive animal management, which was amazing. Opened up a whole new world of possibilities of what I could do. And while I was doing that course, that inspired me to actually go and get some work experience. So I went overseas. I worked in Africa for a little bit with some big cats, which was remarkable. Again, that just added more fuel to the fire of wanting to learn about animals and their behavior.
I bet that was
Then,
cool, actually.
oh my days, yeah. That could be a whole other 10 podcasts, what I could tell you about it. It was out of this world. It definitely, set the standard very high of what I wanted to do and achieve and be able to give back a bit. And then when I came back from Africa, it was quite hard to find placement in a role in zookeeping at the time in captive animal management. So
Hmm.
I thought, what else would be helpful? So I did vet nursing. So that sort of, at the time, it was a good transition point to get my foot in the door and then potentially move further in line to captive animal management. But I ended up sticking with vet nursing for quite a while.
Actually, you've piqued my interest too with the zoology studies.
Mhm.
So when you did the course, what was the course called? Who did you do it with? And then was going to Africa and working with all sorts of exotic animals part of the course, or how did that all come about?
Yeah, so first off, I did captive animal management through TAFE. So that
Yep.
was a cert 5, I think it was. And that was more sort of generalized animal husbandry. And you're looking at the bigger animals as well, focusing more on enrichment. And then I went and did an ethology and animal psychology degree, which was more so about then understanding obviously the why behind the natural behaviors, and then how in our human world we could then provide for animals who are in captivity and making sure that we're meeting all those needs as well. So that was, yeah, that was probably what pushed me to go, great. So I've learnt all this. Now how can I go apply it? Which is why I then looked at going overseas.
Wow. So the overseas part was like a by choice and through further exploration of like, I've got to go and pursue this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so. Everyone was sort of having gap years at the end of school, and I was like, great, okay, so I could either go travel Europe, which wasn't really my sort of jam, or I could go work in a big game park with big cats, and learn more. So yeah, that's where I
Yeah.
went.
Well, you get to go and travel and learn. Like, how cool is that?
Absolutely. Yeah, very
Yeah.
much so. Yeah.
I love that. And so, working as a vet nurse, how did you get your first job in a practice and what was that like?
Funnily enough, we actually had a really close friend who also did pet sitting for us when we went away for our family pets, and she was the head vet nurse at just a local clinic.
Yeah.
And I always very much looked up to her because she just had this incredible way with our animals. And I loved geeking out and chatting with her about all things vet nursing. So when I came back, I had a chat to her, and there was actually an open role for a junior vet nurse. So
Hmm.
I went to the small family clinic, and they were fantastic. They were really supportive. They, yeah, were very patient with me because I was obviously learning and trying
Yeah.
trying to learn more. But yeah, no, it was a really beautiful family practice that was, yeah, incredibly supportive.
I also, part of me thinks that, that willingness to learn, regardless of whether you knew everything or not, did that not come in handy? Like when it came to working with the veterinary clinics and getting a foot in the door?
I think so. I mean, I think they did very well to keep up with my busy brain, like asking all these questions. And probably I think I learnt to pick better times to ask questions as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they were very happy and really keen to sort of explore what I'm wanting to learn and things as well. So they were very supportive. And I guess it works for them as well because the more they can educate their staff and have
Yeah.
staff who have a better understanding, the better they can support the animals and the clinic as well. So yeah, I was very lucky, I think, in that placement.
And what sort of responsibilities did they give you in that role?
To start with, it mainly was sort of the animal husbandry. So it was helping with even just the handling of cats and dogs when they came in. They needed sort of vaccinations, nail clippings, all those sort of basic care where two hands are better than one pair of hands.
Yes.
And then they started training you up, depending on what we were going through, sort of if it was a surgery day or if it was just a quiet clinic day. They would always make time to, talk through what the procedures are and how I could be involved. So they'd always find something for me to do.
Hmm.
Um, as I got more confident, then I was able to transition into surgeries with them and things like that and do anesthetics and all those sorts of things. But it was mainly first looking after the dogs after surgery, making sure food, walked, toileted, all those sorts of basic things to start with. And then you built up on your skills by running bloods while they were doing surgery, doing admin at the front, booking in consults, doing basic sort of vet nursing things like ear cleaning and nail clipping and all those sorts of things. So yeah, they went at the pace that I was capable and comfortable with doing. And yeah, just kept growing from there.
Just listening to all those responsibilities, actually, it sounds quite extensive. Did they end up requesting that you do anything specialized in vet nursing or?
No, I think they could see as I started to get a bit more interested in the behavioral side of things, they were very open to me coming into consults that, were based more so about behavioral medication and things like that, which was
Yeah,
great. So I think they were very good in supporting what the passion was as well. And, again, it's going to work for them. If there's someone who's more passionate about surgery, then obviously they're going to be, a lot more inclined to do more continued education and probably thrive in that, and that's a better role for them. So I think the same for me. I was definitely itching and scratching to want to know more about the behavioral side of things.
sure. And I guess
Yeah.
that's the best catalyst for like the next question that I wanted to ask. So,
Yeah.
moving forward to dog behavior, so you obviously started developing a real interest in the vet clinics.
Mhm.
What was the main catalyst for you to go, yeah, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm going to do.
Jeffrey. So my beautiful
Jeff.
boy that I have now, he was definitely that catalyst, definitely that moment. I think when Jeff came into my life, he had had a fairly traumatic start to his life.
Okay.
My best mate Dan passed away and he lost his battle to mental health and he left Jeffrey in my care. So that was an absolute honor. But Jeff had obviously gone through a pretty rough patch.
Right.
And at the time I was vet nursing and the vets were incredible. They were giving me as much support and advice as possible. But Jeff had, because of what he had gone through and because of what Dan had gone through, Dan hadn't had the opportunity to socialize him properly and to do all the things to help lay a solid foundation to build a really resilient pup. So Jeff was showing behaviors that, you know, I didn't even know were possible when I was vet nursing. You'd usually see a dog that was stressed that would come in or, but Jeffrey was just fairly extreme in the behavior side of things. So I think vet nursing and even vets were fantastic, but it wasn't giving me what I needed to be able to support Jeffrey through his behavioral needs, if that makes sense. I needed to learn more, and I needed to be able to provide and care for him. And that's where I go, vet nursing is amazing, but it's not going to get me to where I need to be to support Jeffrey.
Yeah, 100%. And so what sort of behavior did Jeff struggle with specifically? Like what was, if you could describe what it was like, just so we can get a picture of that.
Yeah, so initially, because of the trauma attached, he was with Dan for a couple of days, unfortunately, after Dan had passed away. So there was
Ugh.
significant trauma bond to Dan. So Jeff, I'd never actually seen a dog cry. And when I brought Jeffrey home, he was just blubbering and there was water pouring out of his
Aw.
eyes. And again, I had to convince myself, I was like, dogs can't cry. And it was like, no, he was. So emotionally, he was just disconnected from everything and anything, basically.
Yep,
So the anxiety attached to that
of
was
course.
huge. So getting him through that. And I think because I didn't have the skills, I just thought, at the time, or the understanding of dog behavior, I thought the best thing was to get him out and about and walk and do all these fun things. And, looking back, that just overwhelmed him more, the poor thing. So he was getting more fearful of the really scary world around him. So he started to become reactive. And because I took him to parks and things like that, there was a couple of incidences where he was involved in, a dog attacking him. So he became more fearful. So his reactivity just grew and grew and grew. And I think again, that was the point where I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm so sorry. Like I need to learn more, because he was pulling, he was lunging, he was biting at things. He was just trying to make the scary things go away. But
Of
at that point I
course.
didn't understand. So yeah, that was his main, was fear-based reactivity.
Yeah. And is that something that a lot of dog owners struggle with that you see on the front lines?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, Jeff's special brain probably fueled my passion for reactivity in particular, because it's very misunderstood. Before I knew what Jeffrey was going through, he looked like an aggressive dog. He's a big bull Arab. He was lunging, barking,
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not a dog that people would think that he's friendly, but realistically, he was terrified and he was trying to make the scary world go away. So,
Yeah.
yeah, the majority of clients that I work with have dogs who are trying to advocate for the scary world, really, and just for space. So yeah, that's one of the main things I do see and work with is fear-based reactivity.
Yeah. Wow. So that's a really heavy catalyst actually for you to get up and make a change. So once you decided, right, I'm going to help Jeff, what was the first steps?
Yeah. So look, one of the first things I did was reach out for support, because I was just so overwhelmed and I could see that what I was trying to do, what I thought was right for Jeff, what wasn't right.
Hmm.
So I go, great. Okay, there's got to be a specialist out here, surely. So I think I literally Googled like lunging, barking dog behavior help, or something really like, simple. And Google popped back training. And I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that's great. I think that's what we need. We need some training, behavior, and support. And somehow magically the world put Ian from Bondi Behaviourist in my path. He is just a remarkable dog behaviourist. And
Cool.
he was probably the turning point for mine and Jeffrey's relationship, definitely, to be like, there's hope. The 15 years is not going to be hell. It's not going to be stressful.
Or there's a
Um,
solution at least, you know?
yeah, hope. Hope was
Yeah.
definitely one of the things he definitely gave us, as well as confidence, I think, to feel like, yeah, we've got this. We can manage this. So he supported Jeff and I through some incredibly difficult behavioral phases. And I think it was watching him work with Jeffrey is really what, again, just sort of switched something in my brain going, that I want to be able to do that. I felt like I could breathe, seeing Jeffrey sort of breathing and coping, and Ian having the abilities to communicate between dog and guardian, and teaching me how to communicate with my beautiful boy. That's what made me go, that's what I want to be able to help give back to people.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Working with Ian, what was the experience with him like?
Yeah, so Ian was great actually. I lived up on the North Shore, so he probably was about 45 minutes away from where I was, but he
Mhm.
was fantastic. So he came out. I was sort of prepared for the first session to be like, great, we're going to fix this, we're going to do this. And Ian's like, no, we're going to sit down and you're going to learn how to understand what's going on with your dog. And I'm going to help, give you the skills. Because for so long, and I think with vet nursing as well, you'd always have a trainer, they'd come do the session. It was like the dog was fixed almost, there was this expectation that the trainer's going to do everything. And I
Mhm.
think that's what really, um, sort of drew me to Ian, was he's like, he doesn't need fixing. You need to understand him, and he needs to
Yes.
be able to understand you. So yeah, Ian was great. The first consult we had, I don't think we even took Jeffrey out for a walk. We just sat and talked or I talked at Ian, asking him all the questions, and
Yeah.
he gave me all those skills. So he was fantastic. He was happy to travel out to me, which was wonderful. We had a couple of
Hmm.
sessions sort of spread out at a time where I felt like I was growing in confidence with handling Jeffrey, and then he'd come
Hmm.
out and we'd do that again and sort of progress further and further. So yeah, he was great. He was happy to do in-person consults, but I think he also offered virtual at the time. Just in person worked better for me and my brain.
That's amazing. And watching Ian work and the impact that he had on you, do you try and package that up and put that into what you do today as well?
I would like to think that I can give a little bit of what Ian provided. Absolutely. His influence really opened my eyes to what was possible. So if
Yeah,
I can even use that as a little bit of what I can give back to my clients. And yeah, I really do strive to do that. He was really an incredible mentor at that point, and yeah,
that's
pushed me to want to become a behaviorist.
yeah, that's amazing. Ian was obviously a big part of giving you foundational things. That then,
Yeah.
how did you start getting into studying dog behavior seriously post Ian?
Yeah, so I think I actually ended up calling up Ian and going, "Great, this is fantastic. Where do I go from here? Not for Jeff and myself, but where can I go from here to do what you do and to help, help other dog guardians like myself?" Because I think that was one of the biggest things was how I felt about the situation.
Mm,
I was so not confident. I was so unprepared for it. And then that's the skills that Ian really gave me, was giving me the skills and the confidence to be able to support Jeffrey. And I think that's what I found was so different between dog training, where you're teaching a dog to sit, drop, stay, all the sort of more obedient side, as to Ian going, "Great, let's look at the why it's happening and then how we can support him through that." And from there, I think Ian just gave me a list of sort of courses and qualifications and certifications and places to look. And that's where I went down the rabbit hole there. And yeah, that's when it kicked me into wanting to study and change my career path.
okay, and out of all of the resources and courses that Ian sent your way or offered you, which ones had the biggest impact on your skills thereafter, after working with him?
There was a big list, and I think I did a couple of the sort of basic certifications to be classified as a dog behavior and trainer in Australia, but there I still didn't even feel like it had the information that I needed to be able to provide the guardians with, particularly with the reactivity and aggression cases that I wanted to work in. So
Hmm.
I contacted Ian again and I said, "Hey, are there a couple of other courses you can recommend?" And yeah, he did. He sent me back another list again, which was very kind of him. Um, and the two that probably stuck out the most was the Legs Applied Ethology Framework course, and that's by Kim Brophy. It was helping me to understand behavior through their framework, which is learning, environment, genetics, and the dog's self. So that tickled my dog nerve brain so much. And I
What was
think
different about this one? Like, what was so like inspiring about that course, or what new pieces were you able to get from it?
I think it made us look, or it made me look at an animal more so as an individual, not
Okay.
based off sort of what we already know about them, if that makes sense. It was more so looking at particularly like the genetics of the dog and how that impacts things, and how the breed can impact things, and how a dog's learning and environment and all those different things. So every single dog is an individual, obviously, but based on their little world, how that can impact the world around them, if that's making sense. And
Of
the other
course.
courses I found was more so, "Great, so you want a dog to do this, let's make it do that." And I don't wanna make a dog do anything. And I think that's what Kim Brophy's course was really good at showing, was that dogs don't have to do anything for us. We wanna build a relationship with them. We want them to want to do things with us.
Yeah.
We wanna be able to support them and give back. And I think that's really what stood out so much is, yeah, dogs are autonomous beings. They are sentient beings. They have their their own wants, their needs, their likes, their dislikes. And yeah, that's, I think, what really gave me a foundation to be able to help owners or dog guardians understand their dogs themselves. It's not
Yeah.
the dog working for us, it's us working with our dog. It's us building a relationship with our dog. So that just, I keep going over that course, even though I've finished it. I do it a couple of times a year. Just go back and go over it because I learn something new from it every single time.
It sounds really interesting actually, because like you're right. You can get outcomes through repetition, which will be
Mm,
like do one, two, three a bazillion times, and you'll likely get X output. But with humans as well, we're so complex, you
yeah,
can't always do one, two, three to get the output. And so what I'm hearing is it really helped with understanding that there's lots of different variables to work with, and it provides a whole deeper layer in what things you can look at to get a particular outcome. Am I getting that right?
absolutely. That's a much better better way to put it than I did. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's unpacking each layer and yeah, looking at the dog. as a whole, not as its behavior, basically. Yeah, very much so.
That's awesome.
Um,
And so during studies as well, what was the
mhm.
hardest bit to uh, get your head around, or like the hardest parts of studying?
I think trying to unlearn, and that sounds really silly, but learning to challenge the older narratives, and particularly with outdated training methodologies, outdated theories. And I think, I don't know if I'd call it hard, but it was challenging because it's not what we grew up on. We grew up with dog trainers making a dog do this, or, not a dog trainer questioning why a dog's doing that. And I think that was hard initially, but then once you understand the concept, that made it a lot easier. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess having Jeff there as well, that you can implement those skills with, like you're learning in real time and using them with him. I
Yeah.
guess that kind of confirms it too, that what you're learning and you can put it in practice straight away makes the
100%.
biggest difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're not wrong. Seeing a relationship grow is probably one of the best gifts in the world. And I think that's what, dog behavior is about, really. It's helping to fix relationships that have been probably strained, and
Yes.
to help them rebuild that and have a really happy and successful life.
Is there any other, mentors that, have given you lessons that have really stuck with you?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the biggest things I've probably learnt, particularly with working with so many different people and different dogs, is that behavior always has a function. And I think for so long it was so easy for us to label it as an aggressive dog or an angry dog or a sad dog, or, even just really basic words to sum up such complex behaviors.
Mm,
And I think the biggest thing that, I've learnt from my dog guardians is that trust and safety come before training, always.
100%.
That's gotta be a priority, and honouring the dog's whole story, I think, as well. So I think some of the biggest mentors have obviously been some of the incredible people that I've studied with and learnt with, and people like Ian. But sounds really silly, but I actually learned so much through working with the dog guardians themselves and their dogs. They teach me so much as well. I'm always learning with them as well.
Yeah, nothing like a bit of live reflection as well, like on the job. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's amazing. I think that's why experience in some cases does trump study in a way, because when you're on the job, you get to see so many different things that don't always get mentioned in the official resources or whatever. So,
You're not wrong. Yeah, absolutely.
and now I want to get down into Trail Sniffers. Tell us about when it became more than just an idea.
I think it was when I realized that there were other dog guardians out there who were going through what Jeffrey and I had gone through. And I know that seems so silly because, of course, there's always someone else who's gone through what you've gone through. But I think before having the understanding and insight and skills and confidence that I was given by Ian, and then by learning, I think I felt so alone. I felt like
Mm,
an outcast. I felt like a really bad dog guardian. I felt like, Jeffrey was an aggressive dog because I didn't do XYZ. I felt so disheartened. And I think the more I learnt with Jeffrey and the more our relationship grew and thrived, the less important the behavior came and the more important the relationship became. And I know that sounds silly, but
does
you
not
know,
sound silly at all.
I think there was such a focus of Jeffrey barks, so you got to stop him barking at other dogs. And, that's what I thought initially, until I learned that there's a why behind why he's barking. And I think I didn't want other dog guardians to feel like that, or to feel how I felt. It was
Hmm.
incredibly isolating. And generally, the people with the really special spicy pups are the ones who are trying the hardest and who are struggling in silence. So I think that's why Trail Sniffers came to the surface, because I thought, what a remarkable creature I have next to me who has
Mm.
given me this opportunity, who has taught me so much. It's an honor and a privilege to share my life with him. So why not try and give a little bit back of what he's given to me to other dog guardians and their dogs as well. So that's when I was like, yep, cool, that's it. We're doing it. Great. Yep, movie.
Do you feel like these studies and the experience that you had accrued by that time helped with the confidence of pushing forward?
Very much so, yeah. I think I would not want to go into creating a company or a business without having those skills that I
Mm.
definitely needed. I
Hmm.
wouldn't want to go out there and preach and not being able to have practiced it, if that makes sense. I think the fact that I went through it with Jeffrey is why I'm going to toot my own horn, but is why I'm so good at what I do, because I do
Yeah,
understand, because I can be a safe space, because I'm not going to say, oh, he lunged, he barked, you're not doing this right. I think definitely empathy is one of the biggest things that I tried to build Trail Sniffers on.
100%. And I
Yeah.
would not say it's tooting your own horn. I would say more so it's actually true alignment. Like when the skills and all of the messaging matches up, and you can provide that because you've got the experience and the results, like
Mm.
it's just bound to happen. That's what true alignment does. It makes great things. So yeah,
I like that way. That's a nice way to look at it. Yeah.
that's really inspiring, actually. And when you started Trail Sniffers, do you remember what it was like with your first client? Tell us about that.
I was so nervous on my days, honestly. I felt like I don't even know the experience that I could put it back to, but I was so confident. I'd spent like weeks before getting questionnaires filled out and knowing as much as I could about them before I rock up. And then I get there and that all just goes out the window. You know, you just see the dog, you see the guardian, and they're just both struggling. I tried to do what Ian did for me on the first time, and that was just, let's just go sit down. Let's just sit down and we have a chat. Let's just bring it back to basics. Let's just, yeah, it's not me coming in telling you what you've done wrong. You know, that's not what it is. I want you to feel safe and comfortable in your place.
Hmm.
And her face, and her dog was beautiful. He was quite reactive to unfamiliar people. So I said, look, we want it to be a safe space. Let's set him up outside, give him something to do. So he's busy. He's not feeling upset that I'm in his space. And then you and I can sit down and we can have a cup of tea and we can just talk. And there was just this sort of shock on her face because she had worked with a couple of trainers in the past. And the reason she reached out was mainly because she said, I saw your story about Jeffrey. I feel like you understand. And I think from that moment, it didn't matter the 10 hours of research I'd been doing or questions I'd been asking. It was just, this is what I wanted to be able to provide for them. And yeah, I think my consult with her ended up going for about 3.5 hours. You know, it's meant to be about 75 minutes initially. And we
Yeah.
ended up just talking, and I got this message at the end of the session. She goes, thank you. I feel like I'm heard, and I don't feel like I have done wrong by my dog. And I was like, perfect. That's exactly where we wanted to get to. So yeah, they definitely stick in my mind. And when people are like, oh, how did it come to fruition? And what was your first client like? And yeah, she was definitely a remarkable first client. And he was the most beautiful boy. And she still sends me updates, actually. Gosh, I'm going to get teary. She still sends me text messages being like, look, we're out and about now and he's sitting at the cafe. Or, you know, we had someone come over and he was fine. He went and sat in his crate and chewed on
That's so cute.
something. Yeah, so that was really special. I think as a first client, it was a pretty remarkable place to start.
And sometimes even that extra time that you spend while you didn't maybe get compensated for the extra 2 hours, you actually got compensated in experience, and it just shows you like that you can do it.
Percent. Yeah, at that point, I don't think, you know, even money or finance was a driving factor. I think I was just so
Mm.
excited to sit and talk to her and feel like she could breathe a little bit more and at least even have a safe space to talk about it, not feeling like she was judged. I was like, yeah, that's why. And yeah, I remember coming home to Jeffrey actually, and mum and dad always remind me about this. And I said to him, I said, thank you, because I was so nervous about how the first consult went, and I came back just beaming. And yeah, I just looked at him and I was like, we did it, kid. Like, this is it. This is what I wanted to do.
That's really cool, actually. All right, and tell us a bit about the philosophy that sits behind Trail Sniffers. Like, what do you try to make sure you're embodying and presenting?
So I think Trail Sniffers' philosophy would be grounded in empathy, science, definitely,
Hmm.
evidence-backed, force-free, and I think the most important thing would definitely be honouring each dog as an individual
Yep.
needs, individual self. We like to focus at Trail Sniffers of seeing the behaviour as communication and not disobedience. I think that's something I really try to push and try to more so educate people on. And that's
Hmm.
a lot about what I do, actually. I'm just educating people. I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm just trying to educate them, help them understand their dogs better. So, yeah, I guess if I can leave a really positive impact and help their relationship grow, then I feel like not my job's done, but I feel like that I've been able to provide a little bit of what I was given when I was in the same space as them.
Yeah. Do you find the extra layer on top of it, you're actually also not only just trying to focus on the dog and their needs, but what about the person? Do you find it difficult to work with people, and you have to figure out where they're at, get them the message so that they can help get the dog the message?
100%. I think that's only something that grew as I grew with my business as well. And the more consults that I did and the more people I talked to and the more, you know, different behavioral cases I worked with, it's more so about providing the skills to the dog guardian and the understanding and the information and insight about what's going on with their dog instead of coming in going, great, let's do XYZ with your dog. You know, I think that can sometimes be a problem in our industry is there's an expectation that we're going to fix a dog and the
Yeah.
dog's not broken, you know? And I think, again, I could easily be a trainer or a behaviorist who comes into the house and goes, great, I'm going to work with you for 6 months, every fortnight, boom, boom, boom. But that's not giving the guardian the skills. I want to be able to give them the skills so they don't have to rely on me being there to be able to have this relationship and to grow with their dog. So I think definitely when I first started, it was more so, okay, great, well, I can do this, and then you try and do it and we see how the dog goes. But more so it's about, great, let's talk. I'm going to try and give you some insight as to why the behavior is happening, how you can then support your dog. And I'm going to be here if you need it, of course, but I would more prefer to have 1 session, 2 sessions, and you feel like you have the skills instead of you having to rely on me to keep that relationship with your dog.
Would you feel like underestimating the amount of work that they're going to have to actually put in as an individual is the biggest thing that they get wrong?
Yeah, very much so. And I think there's a couple of things that probably play into that is humans' expectations versus
Yes.
sort of the real expectations or what the dog's capable of managing and meeting. I think there's always a what you want to see your world with the dog like. For a dog, say, for example, that has stranger reactivity, you might want to be that person that goes and sits down at the pub with their dog, but their dog doesn't want that. And I think it's
Yeah.
really hard to change the sort of path that you had for you and your dog or the vision that you had for you and your dog. So I think definitely that's a really honest conversation I do have a lot of the time with people. We do sort of small goal setting in one of the first sessions.
Hmm.
And by all means, I obviously want to work towards their goals and make sure that we are seeing progress. But I also am someone who comes in, will say, look, realistically, that's not what your dog wants or your dog needs. It's not going to be a life that's going to suit them. And unfortunately, if you do want to go down that path, then the dog's behavior is probably not going to change. So I think, yeah, that's something I've gotten a lot, not a lot better, so that's bad English. So my skills have grown in communicating with the human as well, not just
Yep.
the dog in the consult,
Yep.
and having those tough conversations as well, because behavior can be quite serious. I work with a lot of sort of counsel dogs on menacing and declared dangerous dogs, and it needs to be taken seriously. And sometimes coming in and just sugarcoating it is not going to do anything for them. It's not what
Mm.
they need. So there are some very, not harsh conversations, but there are some difficult conversations I do need to have with them. And that's definitely a skill that I've had to learn to work on myself. That's not something that I'm going to be able to get from just reading a textbook or something like that.
Of
It's about
course.
having that confidence in myself to be able to provide the support they need as the guardian more so than the dog.
Yeah. Do you ever get people get defensive? And if you do, how do you mitigate that or work with that? Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, I think there's always going to be big conflict, and then some conflict can be healthy. I think, again, within myself, I've had to get much better at setting boundaries as sort of as a business as well. Quite a few people find it quite, what's the word? I think I just remember some of the consults I walk in where it's almost like there's a shock on their face that they've got a really big dog showing signs of aggression and reactivity. And then in walks a female, and we're like, okay, great, I'm just going to sit down. We're just going to talk. I think there's an expectation sometimes that I'm not capable of handling the dog with a lot of people. So that's always a bit of a conflict sometimes when I have a conversation. I think the biggest conflict is when people have been using aversives, so things like prong collars or e-collars. Again, I'm also about educating. I don't want to shame anyone for using whatever type of training support and tools they've been given. But again, I think sometimes people are not too on board to start with the more force-free approach that I do tend to take. It's
Yeah.
much easier to shut down a behavior quickly with an aversive, and people can see results quicker. So I think the conflict tends to come when I sit down and have a conversation and say, great, yep, so your dog's been doing this for 8 years now, and we're not going to change it in a session, and I tend to not, well, I tend to not, I definitely don't work with aversive tools. So again, sometimes the conflict starts where they go, well, I've been walking my dog on the e-collar and it's worked. And I go, that's great, but I don't tend to do that. So I think sometimes there's a bit of conflict, but again, it's, I think, a bit of a lack of education. So if I can
Yeah.
provide insight and give them a bit more of an understanding as to why I choose to not use those tools, and when they can start to see results, that's when I think they feel a bit better about it. But I think, again, I've gotten better at not jumping to, oh, they're angry at me, or they didn't like me, or it was a personality clash. It's not that at all. Most of the time it is just a lack of education or a lack of understanding, and you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
So I think to start with, that sort of ruffled my feathers to begin with, because I thought, oh, I'm not good at this, or I should have handled this differently. But now I take it as a bit of a challenge to go, okay, I was once in their foot. I walked in their shoes before. I was very anxious and stressed, and having someone into my house saying, I've stuffed my dog up, like, help me, you're pretty vulnerable. So I think
Mm.
that's definitely taught me how to grow in my people skills, definitely.
It's
And
important.
yeah, very much so, because I didn't realize how much it was actually going to be based with working with the guardians. Most of it's working with the guardians. And initially I thought it's great to go work with the dogs, and, it's definitely not that. So I think my communication skills have also had to grow, and me putting in boundaries as to what I am going to do or what my business sort of will do and will not do, I think is another big thing as well.
And so what's the hardest part of the job? Like when you're doing the day-to-day, or yeah, what do you find challenging the most?
I think the emotional weight, and it's not a bad thing, but there are some cases which are pretty severe and don't always have the happiest of endings. And I think that's something again that I've got to get better at. Or there's always room for improving, and I have gotten better at doing it, but it's not carrying that weight as much as I used to. Working with both fearful dogs, aggressive dogs, reactive dogs, anxious dogs, and then also working with their guardians who are also going through their own emotional journey as well. So I think that's a boundary I have had to put in place is, of course, I can be connected and supportive to the guardian, but I also need to be the person who is there to be that support. And I can't be support if I am carrying all that weight for them. That's not going to help them. So
Mm,
that's one of the hardest things I find. And I won't blame my parents, but they brought us up to be very loving, kind, considerate, and empathetic people. And
yeah.
I think that's a skill that I've had to learn to develop is I can be there to care and support and provide as much help as I can, but I can't carry that for them, and that's probably one of the hardest things is, yeah, that emotional load at the end of the day or with a case or something like that.
Mm. And what's the most rewarding part for you?
I think seeing that moment where it clicks with the dog guardian going, "Oh my gosh, I understand. Like, that makes sense. My dog's not just being a bit of a twat," or, you know, "Yes, I can understand why they're doing that now." And it's this relief in them, I think, because, yeah, as I said, there's so much shame that comes with being a reactive dog owner or dog guardian or having a dog that looks aggressive, and I think that then impacts the relationship they have with their dog. So I think if I can help them to understand why their dog is doing that, that's the first step for them to go, I get it. Like, I totally get it. My dog's having a hard time. They're not giving me a hard time. And seeing that moment where you can actually see them relax or them look at their dog and they're like, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't understand that. And I think that's one of the most rewarding things.
The light bulb moment when they see that there is a solution.
Yeah. Or even that, yeah, that they can see a point in where their relationship's going to change from really stressful walks or to yelling at their dog because it's barking or, to them actually going, I get you. Like, I can understand it now. Yeah. And I think that's an incredibly special moment to be a part of. Like, I'm incredibly privileged to work with some of the people I work with.
Yeah, that's awesome, actually. Could you give us also a success story, like one key client that you've worked with where they had a particularly difficult case and
Mhm.
how you worked with them to turn it all around?
I mean, every one of my clients gets me emotional in some ways, but there's definitely a dog that comes to mind when you ask that, and he is the most remarkable, resilient boy in the world. And she was incredible as well as a guardian. She's remarkable, and I still get updates from them. He was a COVID puppy. He's a big breed. He's a German Shepherd, and they lived out on a rural property, so it was really quite hard for her to socialize him. There, it's not like they were in Bondi in Sydney and there were lots of dogs around. And she had done best in her the best of whatever she could do at that time to try and get him out and to get him socialized and things. They unfortunately went through a pretty traumatic death in the family, and similar, I think I related to her in that she became very emotionally connected to the dog, and the sort of space for training went out the window, which it absolutely happens, but that was not a priority in her life at the moment. And
Mm.
so the dog developed a lot of fear-based reactivity towards unknown. And I just from where we started, I remember when we had our first consult, we met out and about, and I was at the end of a football field because he was so reactive. He had to stay
Wow.
in the car for the consult because as soon as he saw me or another unfamiliar person, he was reacting. So I said, okay, great. What we're going to do, you're going to grab him, you're going to drive him home, and I'm going to sit and we're just going to have a phone call. So we had the consult over the phone. And from there to where we got to her being able to walk him out and about, her expectation was, I want to be able to take him to a cafe and have him sit down.
Mm.
And then once we had a chat, I said, "Look, that's not what he needs. That's not what he wants, and that's going to be quite different to sort of the path that you're wanting to go down." And now we've gotten to a point where he's neutral towards dogs and towards people, and he can walk out and about. She doesn't even want to take him to a cafe now because she goes, "That's not what he wants. That's what I want." But yeah, I get updates of her just like filming him walking past like a tradie site with all these tradies talking to him and him just looking at them and walking past. And I think I've worked with them for close to 4 years now.
Wow. Do you know
And
when you were saying about you standing at the other end of a football field, that was what
yeah,
was required because it was that bad for them. I didn't even realize it could get that bad, to be honest.
yeah.
That's remarkable. And then now he can go and walk past people. Can he will he sit at a cafe or he just doesn't like it? They don't like
Look, he probably absolutely could, I have no doubt about that, but now her understanding of his behavior and
has
her
switched that for
realizing.
her completely.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, and so our goals change significantly because I get them to write down a couple of goals of what they want even before we have a session, and then sort
Mm.
of after the first session, I get them to do the same thing. I go, "Based on the goals that you did write, would you change any of them?" And her change just came back. She goes, "This is not good for him. This is not good for him. This is not good for him. I wanted this, not what he needed." Yeah, from there, it just thrived. So we touch base sort of every 6 months, because she still lives out on the property, but now she comes into town and we can have sessions, we can walk out and about. She just wants to keep learning and understanding him in every single way possible. I said to her, probably a year ago, I said, I love our sessions, don't get me wrong, but please don't feel like you need to. I don't think you're at the point where you do need the continued support. I'll always be if you need. And she goes, I just like talking to you. I just like learning. You pick up on things that I can't pick up on. And yeah, I think that's definitely one of the biggest success stories, I think, and that's one of the things that fuels me is the relationship and how it grew for them and seeing that change in both of them.
Mm.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like she really picked up everything that you picked up when you were learning with Ian. Like it's a chain of understanding and passing that on. I bet you that feels rewarding.
Yeah, it really does, and I think, yeah, as I said, it's such a privilege to be asked into someone's world like that and to be, they're in a really vulnerable position. And I think that's such an important relationship that I can grow. And I'm friends with most of my clients, to be honest,
Yeah.
yeah, it's incredible. They open up their world to you. And I think it's a gift to be able to give something back to them. And again, I do bring it down to obviously Ian and his influence, but mainly Jeffrey, because I say the same thing. I said, I've been in your shoes. I've been with a dog who I've yelled at, who I've been really angry with, who I cry after a walk because it was just horrible. Like I've been there, and I think when they feel like they're heard and have a safe space to express how they are expressing, that makes it different for them too.
That's awesome. All right. Now moving further down into the collaboration part, because
Mhm.
this is our second collaboration, but we've actually got some other things in the pipeline that we've been cooking up. So our other project with Prac Skills and the collaboration that we've just done on the online course.
Mhm.
Without going into too much detail on it, because we want to keep all the good bits for later, but we have been working on it. And what we wanted to do was create something that was practical for people as a starting point.
Mhm.
With your input and the collaboration that you've put into it, why is it a practical modern learning resource for people that want to get into dog training, whether it be for their own pet or professionally like you've done?
Yeah.
Take it away.
I think it's pretty simple because it's accessible and ethical education that, and it's a way that we can bring out change in the industry.
Mm,
Um, People deserve science-based support and information from the get-go, and that's what the course provides, and that's why I was so excited about it. It is something that is very new, and I cannot think of anything that is even somewhat remotely close to what the course does provide. Yeah.
I'm really excited about that project as well. A few more steps and we'll be out there. But yeah, no, I just wanted to give a little glimpse on that. I didn't want to go too much into it because there is a few marketing things that we want to get in the pipeline first. But
Yeah,
yeah,
just a
okay,
teaser.
awesome. And with the course as well, how have you tried to apply your lived experience with the updates that you've put into it?
So I think it's everything that I've been influenced with by working with reactive dogs, I think is
Hmm.
probably what fuels a lot of it, or reactive and anxious. And not that the course is mainly focusing on that, but I think that gives it more of a why behind the behavior and a different look as to we are teaching your dog to sit in this section. It's we are understanding why your dog is not wanting to sit. It's more so about, okay, well, that's not happening. So why is that not happening? And I think again, it's providing a very different overview and insight into the traditional dog training sort of behavior courses that are out there. So I think Jeff's definitely influenced it. And then, yeah, the work that I do with our little special spicy pups.
That's awesome. All right. And just to wrap up and bring us to the end, what would you tell your younger self in relation to uh, dog behavior and where you've ended up?
I think the saying that your dog is not giving you a hard time, he's having a hard time. I think that can apply similarly to dog guardians in particular. I think
Mm.
that you're not failing, you're learning, and that's going to look very different for everyone. But I think, slow and steady wins the race, and they're not wrong, one day at a time, absolutely one day at a time.
And have you got any advice for somebody that might be, in a similar position to you? They've thought about being a dog behaviorist professionally.
Mm.
They
Yep.
want to do their own business like what you've done. What's the best single piece of advice that you'd give them?
Mhm. Stay curious, definitely. Be fueled by compassion and find someone in the industry or a supportive mentor who can help guide you through it. I think that's a really good place to start to get your foot in the door.
Mhm.
But yeah, if it had to be a couple of words, it would be stay curious always.
And keep a lookout for the course that we've got coming. Final one, where can people find you on the internet? Where's the best place to get in contact with you if somebody wants to get coaching or ask you any questions about what we've discussed today?
Yeah, groovy. So just www.trailsniffers.com or at Trail Sniffers on Instagram are usually the easiest places to get in touch.
Perfect. Alrighty, Camille, thank you so much for having this chat with me today, and I will see you for our next part of the project.
Absolute pleasure. Cheers, Tom.
Thank you.